Okay, started.
Good morning and welcome to the Finance Economic Development Committee meeting. First order of business is a roll call, please.
Mike Berlin,
Here.
Laura Negro,
Here.
Pat Kinney,
Here.
Ron Stendor,
Here.
Marty Vitek,
Here.
Thank you. Quorum is present. Item number 2 is the approval of the agenda. Any additions or deletions at this point? This has been amended once. Pat?
The next meeting date towards the end of the minutes says February 17th. It should be February 1st. We had changed the original date to today. I'm sorry. I was. Could you project the?
You guys use your mics.
One second. I'm sorry. I was going to ask the administrator if he would project the things on the screen as long as we have those things here. I wasn't paying attention. Sorry, I was off one there.
Okay.
I'll make a motion
Question.
to approve the minutes.
Let's go back to approve the agenda.
The agenda, excuse me.
Okay. We have a motion by Ron to approve the agenda. We have a second by
This is Pat, I'll second.
Pat. Any questions, comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Public comments. I think what we're going to do is bring the folks that's in attendance rather than wait until the item comes up on the agenda. So we have you guys up front and center. How are you going to do that, Pat? To bring Mr. Kuchep up?
It's public comment, so he can come up and speak for up to 3 minutes. So so whomever wants to go first.
I'll go. Good morning, and thank you, Chair Berlin and members of the Finance Committee for this opportunity. My name is Glenn Carlson, and I am the town chair of the town of LaPointe. I am also a retired CPA and have been a partner at 2 of the world's largest accounting firms. So I recognize the county's unsustainable financial situation. And as a fellow elected official, I relate to the difficult choices you face to fix it. I'm not here to debate the merits of the county's law enforcement agreement with the town. The county administrator and some members of the county board seem convinced that this funding arrangement, which has been done every year since at least 1995, isn't a necessary and mutually beneficial expenditure. While I disagree, that's not why I'm here today. I'm here today to urge you to avoid breaking trust with the town of LaPointe, which will happen if you approve the proposal before you. I'm encouraged to see that you are also looking at alternative sources for your jail funding. As you do so, I would ask you to consider the challenge facing my board members. How, if the county is struggling to find $80,000, can we, with an operating budget that is 7 times smaller than yours, somehow find $135,000? The truth is we factored every dollar of your commitment into our tax levy and budget. Despite what you may have heard, the town of LaPointe is not flush with cash. And at this late date, we would need to borrow to cover this shortfall. I will say, had the county administrator suggested to us when we were drafting our town budget, that although the $135,000 would be in the county budget as always, that we should not count on it in drafting our own budget, I probably wouldn't be here today if that had happened. But that's not what happened. We first learned of this less than a month ago, after your last Finance Committee meeting. We weren't even invited to attend that meeting and only learned of this afterwards, several weeks after our once-a-year opportunity to set our tax levy. Put aside that the town of LaPointe is the 2nd largest municipal source of the county's tax levy. More importantly, it is also the county's second most electorally supportive municipality. In last April's referendum, LaPointe came in a close second behind the city of Ashland's 52% yes vote. Its 48% support was fully 20 percentage points more than the referendum got in the balance of the county. That reflects trust and goodwill that's been built up over decades. If you renege on your 2022 commitment at this late date, you risk greatly damaging or destroying that trust and goodwill. If you feel you must end your agreement with the town, I would encourage you to make it effective at the end of 2022, not now. That will give our town government an opportunity to engage with our residents and businesses on their expectations about local law enforcement before we prepare next year's budget and tax levy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Anyone else online that has to make a comment? Okay, we're on. All right.
Well, I think all of you know how I stand on the jail, getting $2 an hour increase for our jail staff. Right now, we are 3 full-time people short. We have one who is out on maternity leave. She's going to be gone still for another couple of months. And we're 2 other people full-time short, and we don't have any part-timers. We've got COVID going through the jail, not the inmates. Thankfully, we've been doing very well like that. As far as staff, however, we've had numerous staff members that have had COVID. And so all of our staff is working a lot of overtime. No one has been allowed to take any time off. And it's been very hectic. We also are housing out all of our females. Douglas County was where we were housing them. Unfortunately, Douglas County had a COVID outbreak in the jail and with their staff. So they said they couldn't house for us. The closest county to us that would take them is Oneida County, which is in Rhinelander. It's about 2 hours and 20 minutes one way. So we had to move everyone. We've already had to make 3 trips down there with females. It's getting, back in December, we spent $16,000 just on the females with housing, medication. That did not include transport. So it's gonna be costing a lot. And once COVID slows down a little, we're gonna be housing out a lot more females. And that's gonna increase our budget quite a bit, because for every female housed out, that's $50 a day, and more medication and more transport. So we're looking at quite a hefty sum. So not only, so I'm requesting the $2 an hour that you guys are talking about. I also feel, this is totally off that subject, my sheriff deserves a raise. He's the second lowest paid sheriff in our county, and nobody ever speaks up for him. He works every day. He goes on numerous calls, and I don't think he gets the credit that he deserves. He's a great guy. He works hard. Nobody ever speaks up for the people like him, who knows what he's doing and doesn't get the praise that he deserves. So I think that people should be honoring him and giving him a raise and giving him the money that he deserves, as well as our secretary. Our confidential secretary is also, she's the lowest paid person at the sheriff's office. We're not going to keep people. We're not. People need to start looking at what's going on. I get that we have a budget. I understand that. But when you look at the human services, the head of human services making, I believe it's $78,000 a year, was it? Working from home. And our sheriff only makes $64,000 a year, out on the road, working his butt off, out in traffic calls. And I don't know, I don't understand how there's a comparison. I don't understand how, I don't know.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Some of this has been in discussion at our previous
Point
meetings.
of order.
Go,
If this is public comments, we're not supposed to be commenting on it.
you are correct. You got something?
I don't know if this is time and place to talk about it during public comment, but I can tell you that I appreciate your words, Lieutenant. It means a lot, but my budget's already set for my pay wages. I get $65,700 out this year. I'm looking for the next sheriffs coming into the county and for my command staff. Right now, my command staff are making less than my patrol sergeants are, which is ridiculous. As the sheriff goes, the new sheriff that comes in here, if it's anybody from my department, they're gonna have to take a pay cut in order to run for sheriff. They won't be getting the overtime. As an elected official, all of you know that it doesn't go by your abilities or your training or your experience. If you don't have a wage set that's going to compensate people to be able to want to do the job and to come and do a job that nobody really wants to do anymore. And if you don't believe that, just go and talk to any other agencies within the state that are short 4, 5, 6 people and can't find qualified candidates to come and fill the positions. You need to look at anybody can then run for sheriff. You don't have to have qualifications. You don't have to have law enforcement experience. So if a person's only going to make less money as working for the sheriff, as sheriff, they're not going to want to take on that added responsibility and added duties and added headaches. They're going to stay where they're at, make more money, and go home and be able to go home when they're done and not have to worry about the phone calls every hour of the day. My command staff, they're all, well, you guys are the finance committee, you know this, you know how much they're getting paid. My lieutenants are paid almost $1 an hour less than a patrol sergeant. There's something wrong with that. I don't know where you guys are going to find the money, how you're going to do this, but it's getting to the point right now that most of these people are here because they love Ashland County. They're loyal to the department and to the people they work for. But if they're going to be able to make more money in another county, and if you need comparisons, I've got probably 10 or 15 of them right now that'll show you the different wages for just the sheriff alone. So I think I know that a $2 an hour raise for my correctional officers is a good start. And it's something that I appreciate. And that's something that needs to happen. And then further negotiations in the future to try to maintain our staff and do that. And as far as the other wages goes, if a patrol sergeant is making more than the sheriff, then we have, there's an issue, there's a problem, and there's no really reason for anybody to do any advancement. My chief deputy, who used to be my detective sergeant, took a $15,000 cut in pay to become chief deputy. He didn't do it for the money. Obviously, he's doing it because he wants to make a difference. And that's why our people are still here, because they want to make a difference. They want to do it. But it's going to come to the point sometime where it's going to be not that way. So I urge you guys to go ahead with that. And as far as the LaPointe thing, I agree that the $135,000 that was already allocated for them should probably be left in that budget for them and terminate the agreement that we have now, the notice, and then renegotiate this wage, how much we're going to pay them, how much we can afford to pay them, how much they need to have, how much is going to make it. So we can do some more studies on this. We haven't looked at this. I have no idea what's going to cost our department to be able to have to run over there on answering calls, ferry costs, one sleds, that stuff. We never came to our attention. So to have it happen in such short notice, it'd be, to the citizens of the county would be the ones that are hurting here. So I thank you for your time, and I just hope that you'll be able to find the ways and means to be able to accommodate everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Mick.
I just wanted to add some of the, from the state wage studies from just sheriffs alone, like, so we can reevaluate the sheriff's wages right now. Bayfield County makes for 2022, $77,949 is for their next upcoming year. Douglas County, $90,361 for their sheriff. Rice County is $77,438 a year for their sheriff. I haven't got back from Iron County, but I believe their sheriff's around 70,000, which should probably make them the third lowest in the state. The lowest in the state is Menominee County at 55,000. Then our sheriff, our current sheriff right now, is the second lowest. So, and the city of Ashland police chief makes 80,000 a year. Again, like Lieutenant Levasseur added, you have other departments, heads of departments in Ashland County. Social service 78,000, highway departments around 76,000. So our sheriff right now controls approximately 50 employees, which probably is more than both of those agencies. So that's all I wanted to add.
Thank you. Dale? I think you'll need a mic so we can record.
I'm Dale Kupchak. I'm with Northwoods Rail Transit Commission, which is a commission that's working with rail in northern Wisconsin, 12 counties in northwest or northeastern Wisconsin, and 8 counties in the UP of Michigan. As most of you probably know, that we haven't had rail service here since 2016 when we had the flood of washout rail. CN went and decided not to repair anything, fix anything, so we have no rail. The commission's been working with trying to get CN to sell the rail lines, and they finally did. The sale is going to go to Watco. It's a railroad company that has about 6,500 miles of track throughout the US, mostly short lines. And with that, we have taken, Watco has started up, they started up last on January 29th in the state of Wisconsin. There was basically 650 miles of track that they bought from CN. So we're working with them, the Rail Commission's working with them folks. The other thing is talking to Stefan Lob. He's the Chief Commercial Operating Officer for Watco. And it was, like I say, it was started up on the 29th. And I did get a call from a relative of mine whose husband works for Watco. They did start up. So they're in process. But what we're trying to do is we'll be working with Watco, the Rail Commission, to see about funding, because there's basically 3 bridges out on the rail line that's abandoned or not in use up here now. And we'd like to we'll help them with, try to apply for funding through the state and federal to get these things going. Also have been working with XL Energy. I got a call from XL Energy a while back. They were concerned about the sale because there's a number of miles that their power lines run on the right of way of the railroad. And they were wondering if that was going to affect them at all. And per the statement from Watco, which I have here, it states that no, Watco will keep the agreement that they had with CN to keep the power lines along the rail. So that's a good thing, because I don't remember what Mike had told me, but there's 20+ miles of power lines that run on the right of way. So if they don't have to go out and change all that, that'll be good. So with that, like I say, we're going to be working with Watco. I think they're a good company. The surface transportation was a big holdup because the Surface Transportation Board in Washington had to approve the sale, and they did on December 20th. So now we're ready to go. There won't be any work done on the rail lines up here until the snow is gone. They need to get out and see what kind of condition the tracks are in. CN won't allow anybody on the tracks prior to the sale. They can only look from intersections or with a drone. So they need to do that. Also, it would be wonderful to get rail back here. We have a number of businesses that used to use rail. As an example, one of the businesses was Thai Energy. They had a plant in the industrial park. They hauled in old railroad ties. They ground them up and hauled them down to XL Energy for power. A very good source of energy, clean burning. It met all the federal state regulations. Now, all the ties go to Superior and they grind them in Superior and haul them back down here. So that's just one of the businesses. So there's a lot of other businesses that we're working with. The loggers, for an example, at the end of 11th Avenue East, there's a couple log yards. They're closed down because there's no rail. A lot of these trucks coming out of northern Wisconsin and the UP are going all the way down to Wisconsin Rapids and farther. Here they could come here, put them on a rail car and go, or go into Minnesota instead of hauling from the UP or northern Wisconsin over to Minnesota. So that's where we're at, and I'm hoping that you'll continue to support the Northwest Rail Transit Commission this year. And do you have any questions or comments I could answer? Pardon?
We're in public comment, so we cannot discuss this with you at this time.
Okay, so if you have any questions, just get back to me then. Okay, thank you for your
Thank
time.
you, Dale. Yeah,
Thank you.
good news.
Chair, I
Yes,
would like Dale to be put on the next agenda for finance. So that way we can have a little discussion on that.
Sure, when would that be?
I'm not sure that.
so noted. Any other comments? Yes, Dick?
Yeah, along those same lines, I met a contact person down at the highway convention in Wisconsin Dells. And he referred me to the Secretary of Highways and Rails. And she called me and we had a good discussion about just exactly what Dale was talking about. I asked her point blank if there's any chance that any highway money could be diverted into rail. And she said they're discussing that possibility right now. And the rail system up here especially directly affects the condition of the roads. All these logging trucks running down Highway 13, one right after another every day. You would think that if they put some money in rails to get that heavy equipment off the roads, that it would save probably some of their budget money for the highway. So anyway, she's checking into that right now. She's going to get back to me on it. They've never done that before, but it's a possibility. I guess that's about all I got. I just wanted to update that we do learn some things when we go to these conventions. It's not all party time. And I'm glad I made that contact because I went right to the top with that. And that's a good place to start. And as far as the budget goes with the Sheriff's Department and everything, we have to, okay, first of all, this bump that we're giving them right now for the jailers. But we have to really revamp the whole system. We can't be underpaying our law enforcement people like we do. Especially the sheriff's position. I don't have that chart in front of me. I thought we would get another one today, a comparison. Or maybe it's in the, I don't know, budget amendment, whatever. Anyway, discrepancy between what we're paying our sheriff and the whole rest of the state, sometimes $20,000-$30,000 a year difference. That's disgusting. You're doing the same job. So we have to take a long look at that and how we can fund it in the future to where it should be. It's just something I wanted to pass along. If we expect these people to do the job that they're doing, we have to pay them. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Any other comments? Any other comments?
I just have a question. On the agenda, we have number 15, Veteran Services Officer discussion. Will I be able to address that when that comes up?
Chair Pufall is an ex officio member of every committee. So technically, he's a member of this committee. He could speak during agenda items.
At that time?
Yep.
At that time?
Yeah,
Okay,
thank you.
thanks, Richard. Let's move on to item number 4, the meeting minutes of January 4th. Yes,
I move that we approve the minutes, but I have.
Can you guys use your mics?
The third column, or the third paragraph.
Okay. I'll start over. I move to approve the minutes, except that in the 1 to 3rd paragraph, I think there's a typo on Pat Kinney's name, but other than that, I would move to approve the minutes.
This is Pat. The minutes have February 17th as the next meeting date. It should be February 1st. Is that the one you're referring to?
No, it
So
said,
is-
it said motion by P-A-Y Kinney.
Oh, yeah, the spelling, yeah.
Yeah.
But the meeting date should be February 1, not February 17th. I think there was a meeting originally scheduled for the 17th and we changed it to today.
Where is that, Pat?
It's near the end of the minutes.
Yeah, point of clarification on that the next meeting we knew from the last meeting was the 17th. Unless we needed one before that, so technically that's right.
Well, the last finance meeting, we changed the schedule to reflect today for the next meeting.
That was the executive committee where we changed it. Supervisor Negro is correct. At the last finance committee meeting, the date was set for the 17th.
17th.
At the executive committee meeting, we did all the dates for the finance committee and then the executive committee and the county board were changed. So those changes would not be reflected on these minutes. They would be reflected on the executive committee minutes.
we have a motion on the floor. For a second,
This is Laura. I'll second that Marty's motion.
we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
I,
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Item number 5, approved wage comp plan. This is Carlson Dittman.
We have we had 2 companies respond to our RFP for a wage comp study. The first one is Carlson Detman. And the second one is McGrath Consulting. I would put them both up, but they're huge files. I personally, I'm happy with either one of the companies. I think they both do a good job. I do think Carlson Detman, at least we have a fixed price. The other one is more of a variable price. But other than that, I believe they're both offering essentially the same service.
Go ahead, Pat.
So reading through both of those, and I've worked in places that have done studies, and this always boggles my mind. And the first one, I believe, is one that used the phrases, reliability and validity. So reliability speaks to if we did the same thing over and over again, we'd essentially get the same results. And validity refers to, are we measuring what we purport to be measuring? And a year ago, we were talking about wages and we said, oh, we need a wage study because the job descriptions are so out of date. I really don't know how out of date the job descriptions are. I don't know if everybody has a job description. I don't know when they were last done. Therefore, I have no idea. Let's say technology changes, in some departments that changes fast. So we've got different people doing different things. And so the first one's got a form, you fill out a questionnaire, what kind of things do you do, software you use, et cetera. And then you pick one person out of a group. If you've got 5 or 10 people doing the same thing, you pick one. Well, who you pick may well influence, what they write there. And then you get some feedback with the administration, which is trying to make sure of, is this what you're really doing or you think you're doing, et cetera. And then on the back end, you kind of go back and forth with the administration just to kind of double check, does this seem to make sense? But, what we're largely going to do is pay a firm that's got data on what other people doing similar things, using software, supervising people, level of responsibility. They're going to, go back and forth and plug it into that. But this all really, to me, should start with job descriptions that are at least reasonably accurate. So if an employee that's picked says, well, here's what I do, but maybe that's not everything that they should do, or maybe it's from a job description that's old and something's been shifted somewhere else for whatever reason, or technology has changed. To me, it seems that we really should make at least something of a good faith effort to try to update those job descriptions. Doesn't mean they're going to be perfect and finished, and probably it's always a work in progress because things change. But what if we had the employees write a job description? Doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be edited, but ask them, what do you think your job description is? Do you have a copy of it? Is that what you go by, or are there things that have changed? And then work with the administration and supervisors to have those conversations to get this more in the ballpark. Before we do the study, because at some point with either firm, you've got to go through this process. And then the second one, I find this really amazing, is if we actually want written job description as an end product, we have to pay extra for that. And so to do a study where we don't have job descriptions, my sense is they're really out of date. And the previous administrator suggestion was they're way out of date, and a fair number probably don't even know what that job description is. It seems like we get more bang for our buck. And speaking from experience where places that I've worked where they've done wage studies, on the back end of this, there's probably more acceptance of the employees that, yeah, this seems reasonable, this seems fair, because, things are going to change. That's part of what happens with the wage study. I'm supportive of a wage study, but I'd rather see us put some effort into it first. And it's just as simple as employees writing what they think they do and having the administrator respond. And then one other part of that to me is we may have some opportunities to shift responsibilities and be more efficient by having those conversations first, which then I would hope would put us in a better place once we do that study and we think about how we can be more efficient, because we obviously have lots of needs for funding, including staff that are underpaid.
Thank you, Pat. Any other comment? What's the, I think we need to have a motion on this, don't we?
This is Laura. I have
Go ahead.
some, Dan, usually when we do these RFPs and we've got these contracts back, we've actually interviewed people from the companies. So that way we could get a little more clarity.
We've not interviewed people from the companies, but I have spoken to all of the administrators in the area. And they all have used one of these two companies. And they're all been happy with the results that both of these companies come out with.
Okay, I get that.
So I
But
spoke to
usually
the
the
customers.
committee usually interviews the couple, has a representative from each one of these, and then we ask them more questions to dig into some of this. I'd like to echo what Pat said a little bit. I think this wage study, because, you know, we all heard public comments and we all know that all of our people are underpaid. It comes from years of not making sure that we relayed to the citizens how much our services are actually costing and how much the state is not reimbursing for a lot of expenses that they just put on us. We haven't had those referendums pass. We haven't gotten that across. And with a lot of these changes that we're trying to make, we're trying to get very much more clear on all of this. This piece is huge in scheduling to make sure that we don't continue to leave our employees' wages in the dust. Everybody's underpaid, I'm sure. I can't see in that budget anybody that seems to stick out that is on track. And as we go through and we try to keep piecemealing it until we get a county-wide plan for getting everybody's wages up, this is a huge piece of that. I have a bunch of questions about these different proposals, and I would like to see each person go through and, you know, and I'm sure the department heads can facilitate some of this too. Like Pat said, get some of those job descriptions, at least like a backbone of them. So we know as we're going into this, what everybody does, because we already know everybody's doing 2 and 3 positions in each department and covering each other. So these proposals just, I mean, I lean one way a little more than the other just from direct read, but they make me have more questions. And Dan, you said you talked to other administrators. Did we check any of the references with either one of these?
Well, yeah, I mean, like I spoke to their customers basically, and all of them had good things to say about each one of the companies. All people were happy with what they get received. So it's really a question of, you know, which one suits Ashland County and which one's where the cost structure is.
Pat?
I got a question for the administrator. Carlson Dittman says that they will include 50 job descriptions. Is your understanding that that would be finalized job descriptions?
Yes, those will be finalized job descriptions. So before either of the companies even get here, we can certainly create the rough drafts of job descriptions that you're referring to and hand that to the company. So at least they have something to start with.
Do you have any sense if 50 job descriptions covers everybody or how many we would have?
No, it probably covers, you know, some departments have multiple people in positions, you know. So I'd imagine there'd probably be like 5 or 6 total coming out of highway. So out of the 20 some people there, you know, you'd only use 5 of them. HHS has some duplicate positions, but 50 is nowhere near enough to cover everyone.
So that my sense would be that, let's say someone's doing administrative work in one department, someone else to the untrained eye might be doing similar work somewhere else. You're going to have enough detail in job descriptions, you know, let's say the software they use, level of responsibility. So it's going to be something more than that. So then job descriptions are important for lots of reasons. So what's based on, or I guess the broad question, is your intent for every employee to have a finalized job description when this is done? And which firm do you think would put the administration in the best position to accomplish that?
Yes, the intent is for every employee or every position, I should say, because some employees have the same position. So every position to have a job description, a complete job description. And again, either one of these firms are equally capable of performing the task
Well, the second one, we'd pay extra for that. The first one, we've got to start on that. So from your perspective, in terms of workload and final cost, you have any thoughts on?
I think Carlson Detman is probably the most, will tell us exactly, give us the best cost. I mean, we'll sort of know where it ends up better with them. That's my opinion. I think the other one is more variable. So we have more of a fixed cost with Carlson Detman.
Does that then imply that whatever job descriptions aren't finished with Carlson Detman, that you and others would work on finishing, or?
My thing, I believe all the job description will be finished by Carlson Detman. But yeah, we can finish anything that's not done.
So
Between
now
the
I'm-
department heads and
now I'm
myself.
confused because they said they would do 50. You said 50 wasn't going to cover
No,
it.
that's half of it.
And so the rest of them, whatever that number turns out, are you intending to work with Carlson Dittman, paying them more, or would those be done internally?
I think we could try doing some of them internally, but we may have to pay for more. Based on what they give us for the first 50, we could certainly try to do our own after that.
Could we negotiate with them that if we did a rough first draft or, better information up front, that they might be willing to do more than 50?
Sure, we can certainly ask them.
All right.
Thank you. Are we prepared to make a motion?
I have another question.
Go ahead.
On the second one, the McGrath one, it has a couple of asterisks after the 100 job descriptions, the 16,000 and the not to exceed amount excluding travel is got are those just additional? Is that what we're talking about as additional amounts? That this is your variable piece that you're talking about?
Yeah. Yeah, the job description portion is variable and the travel is going to be much more variable. They are coming from Illinois, so it's going to be a lot longer trip for them.
Okay, that was it. I'm ready to move if I can make the motion if I would make the motion that Carlson Detman be locked in for our wage study.
And do we have a second? Marty Vitek seconds this. Any further comments or discussions? All those in favor signify by saying
We
aye
should-
with going with Carlson Dittman.
We should
Aye.
probably do a roll call.
Roll call.
Lori, a roll call has been requested.
Mike Berlin,
Yes.
Laura Nangro,
Yes,
Pat Kinney,
Yes.
Ron Stendor,
Yes.
Marty Vitek.
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you. Item number 6. You wanted to?
Good. All right, so this item number 6 is to approve or disapprove giving the town of La Pointe 30 days notice to end the law enforcement agreement. The way we set this up is that there's going to be multiple votes on this. So the first vote is just whether or not you want to end the agreement. Not when it takes effect, but whether you want to end the agreement. The next vote, which is going to be item 7, is to approve the pay raise for the corrections officers. If you vote to continue the agreement, then we're going to have to table number 7, number 8, and number 9, because everything else is impossible after that. So number 8 is deciding, are you going to end the agreement this year? If you're not going to end it this year, then we go to number 9. We table that and then we go to number 9 where we discuss alternate methods of paying it for this year. So that's sort of where we are. So we're at the point right now where you have to decide, where you're being asked to decide yes or no, whether or not to give La Pointe 30 days notice.
For clarification, you use the phrase ending the agreement. which is a different phrase than saying serving notice on this.
Right, you would, you basically authorizing me to send them a letter, giving them 30 days notice.
So the chair from LaPointe, if I understood him earlier in his comments, that he would accept ending the agreement at the end of 2022, provided we provided the 135,000 during 2022. Is that,
That's my understanding as well.
so that seems to be some middle ground at the moment. We still need to address wages of the correctional officers.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts on considering ending the agreement at 2020, at the end of 2022, providing LaPointe the 135,000 as budgeted,
Mhm.
even though we have a lot of costs that we didn't anticipate in our budget, with housing people, out of the area. But they understand that too.
Right.
So could we consider ending it at the end of 2022, providing the 135,000? And then, as much as it is not easy, to look for finding money for raises for correctional staff somewhere else.
Yeah, we could use ARPA funding to cover this year's cost. If we ended the agreement effective in the 22, then that 135,000 becomes available in our budget. So we can dedicate 80,000 of that to cover the correctional officers' wages going forward. So we do have to spend our ARPA funds by the end of 24. So we could certainly use that for this year.
So before I make a motion, or if I do, does it seem reasonable to consider ending the agreement at the end of 2022, providing LaPointe the 135,000 as indicated, and then we find funding for jail staff elsewhere? Is that something you can work with? And it sounds like LaPointe could.
Yeah, I can certainly work with I can work with whatever this finance committee decides. So either way, but I do think that is a reasonable solution.
So I'll make a motion that we serve notice that will end the agreement with LaPointe, serve the 30-day notice, and we will also provide the 135,000 in 2022 for LaPointe, and then also direct staff to continue conversations with LaPointe on supporting them. I may remove the word support, but working with them to make sure that the county's obligations are met, but we each do our share. I guess I'll leave it that way. So those conversations need to continue. Yeah.
This is Laura Negro. I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Go ahead.
This is Matt McKenzie, and I came here to look for that solution, to be honest with you, Pat. I'm happy to hear that resolution. I think it's the fair and right thing to do in this situation. And I think if I heard you correctly, the ending of that also is a good spot to be, is to, just acknowledge that we need to sit down. We're not saying maybe we aren't going to do something to support you next year, but this agreement that we have now, we need to be able to step away from it if we have to. And I think this is a good solution, and I support it. And I wanted, everybody to hear that as well, that there is support for this.
Thank you, Matt. Pat?
And this is Pat. I want to thank the chair of LaPointe for his comments earlier today and offering something that both of us can work with. So thank you.
I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you. Did Glenn is still on a call there, so he heard that.
I believe the town administrator is on the call too. Yeah, he is.
Thank you.
Moving on. Okay, do we still do number 7 then?
So yeah, now is you're gonna approve or disapprove a raise for the corrections officers. We will end up tabling number 8 due to the motion on item 6. And then number 9, if you approve the pay raises, how are we gonna pay for it? So Sheriff Brennan is department head here, if he has any additional comments. we're on item number 7.
Do we have any additional comments? No, approve the $2 an hour. It's a good start. I would say take the 135,000 out of the ARPA funds, because that's something that you're going to be negotiating next year with 2023. The $2 an hour wage that you're going to give the correctional officers, is something that's going to be a permanent type thing. So by paying with ARPA funds, how are you going to find it in 2023 then? Negotiations with the lieutenant appoint would then be in 2023, you negotiate that, but the funding will be available because that 135 will no longer be there. You take that 80,000 out to be able to support our correctional officers. So if you just give them the 135 of the budget this year and then just have that $80,000 that you're going to have for the correctional officers, where are you going to find that funding when the ARPA funds are no longer there? So I think that's where it should start out. And I'd also like to add on this for the pay increase for the correctional officers to include the confidential secretary that we have that does do duties with the jail. So that she's included in that also. So I just like to put that out there to you. But I think the $2 an hour is definitely a pay increase that you need to have for the correctional officers. Thank you very much.
This is Laura Negro. I'll make the motion to approve the $2 an hour pay increase for the correctional officers.
Do we have an effective date?
Does our administrator have a suggested effective date?
Beginning of next payroll period.
What he said.
Oh, and also just a point of clarification before there's a second. Are you including the confidential secretary in that? The Sheriff
It's
Brennan just
not-
asked.
It's not on the agenda, so I have a problem with that piece
Okay.
that way. But otherwise, I mean, I wouldn't, but if it would have been included on the agenda. So it just correctional officers as the agenda stands.
Thank you, Chair. I had spoke with the county administrator yesterday to include this confidential secretary on the agenda before it was posted. And he told me that would be able to be brought up before the committee tomorrow. So you have an amended agenda there already that you had that was posted up before that. I thought that this would have been on this as an amended agenda, so we'll have to bring this up again.
Yeah,
in
it
the
was too
future.
late to amend the agenda for that. We were past the 24 hours.
Pardon me?
We were past the 24 hours to amend the agenda to include that. We'd spoken in the afternoon and that didn't give us enough time. But is she, I'll make the opinion that your confidential secretary is jail staff. And in my opinion, I mean, what we're talking about is jail staff. So I would say that it's actually, I would say that's in order. If anybody, otherwise, you guys can decide whether you want to accept that or not.
Discussion?
We don't have a second yet.
We don't have a second.
Ron Stender will second.
We have a motion and a second. Now we'll call for discussion. Go ahead, Pat.
So I'm supportive of increasing compensation for jail staff, and the $2 an hour was a number thrown out there for various reasons. But correct me if I'm misunderstanding the situation. Our two biggest issues are recruiting jail staff and retaining jail staff. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And so the $2 an hour was an easy number based on, the number of employees and the 80,000 from LaPointe. But how do we know that an across the board $2 an hour from those that are new to those that are there is the most effective way of addressing the two concerns of attracting people and keeping people? And I don't know the answer to that.
Well, there's no surefire answer. Every employer faces this exact same situation. I know that this is a solution that the state of Wisconsin came up with for their own prison guard shortage. They raised the pay for prison guards by $4 an hour. because they had literally 50% coverage at a lot of their prisons. So it's the only method that we actually have of attracting people. You know, there's other things that could be done, but they take very much long term and they require partnership with other municipalities. I mean, we could, and we should, and I say we should do this as a long-term goal, is to increase the quality of life here. That's what's going to attract people to jobs in this area. That's what's going to keep people staying in this area by increasing quality of life. But before us right now, all we have to offer is more cash.
Well, specifically what I'm wondering is the biggest challenge, the starting compensation, just getting them in the door, getting them started? Do we have some sense of what that is? Because if that's our biggest problem is just getting them in the door to start, then we need to direct more there than otherwise. And then retention, I have no idea what the retention is. I'm guessing you lose a lot of people. Is it, and why do you lose them? Is it, you know, we need to put more into that first, you know, level or two, you know, and I don't know if you have a salary schedule. I don't know if this is based on longevity. I don't know how this works. So I just want to make sure that I understand at least what your thoughts are on what we have to do to target getting them in the door and keeping them. And I also want to just as a note that if we do a $2 an hour across the board, we should all understand that that means a higher percent increase for those on the low end and a lower percent increase for those that are there, you know, longer and at higher wages, so that we don't later find out, oh, I didn't know that, or I should have thought of that, or I should have asked. I'm just trying to avoid, you know, learning things later that I should have known now.
Sheriff Brennan, what's the starting wage for a correctional officer?
Starting wage would be 90% of $21.77.
Okay, so
And that's $6.23 less than a patrol officer. When they were both in the union, they both made the same wages. Once Act 10 came, it took away those powers, and they took away the longevity, they took away their sick time, they took away everything else that was fairly negotiated prior to that Act 10, but they did it because they could.
So starting is 90% of what they move up to once they hit the top?
After their 1-year probationary period.
Okay, well, that tells me a lot. You just don't have a lot of difference, like someone that's been there a long time making half again as much as someone that's relatively new there. So you get in the door and it doesn't go up much from there.
And it doesn't go much from there.
Yeah.
We have a small department, we have a
Okay.
small staff. Mobility as far as promotion goes, but even at that, our sergeants are only making $1.23 an hour more than our correctional officers. And the requirements, the needs have changed substantially over the years. We're now not just a holding facility for people, we're a mental health facility. We have people in there with behavioral health issues that they won't take anywhere else, but my staff is responsible for taking care of those issues. They're not being compensated at the staff rates that somebody who works in behavioral health is being paid out. I've lost several people to probation and parole, to prisons, warden. The fact of the matter is they work 24/7, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. They have to be there all the time. They can get paid more going to other areas and not have to work holidays, weekends. They can be with their families, but yet they're doing it at this lower pay. The $2 an hour, like I stated before, is a good start, but it's still grossly behind what they should be getting paid. But it's a carrot anyway to say, hey, we realize that you guys are busting your butts out here, and we're gonna try and compensate you as we can. But we understand the county doesn't have the money on this, and how we're gonna do this. They're not asking for, you know, a $20 an hour raise or whatever. They're asking for a fair raise that's going to cover the cost of living. If you look right now, I just saw a quick trick. It was $3.44 a gallon for gas. Can do the math.
So my concern or question, you know, the 90%, the starting is 90% of what they make after they've been there. There's so little difference in that, which surprises me, because in a lot of jobs, there's an opportunity to go further up the ladder in terms of compensation relative to a new person. And because that's so compressed from starting and what you hit at the top, the $2 an hour across the board makes very little difference than if we weighted it a little more heavily towards the starting, because it's so compressed from where you start to where you end. So I'm supportive of the $2 across the board because it's so compressed.
And the thing is that we don't have any space, any pay scales. I
Yeah.
had just one of my correctional officers who was doing a very good job, went to Gordon because they could tell you exactly what you're gonna be making 6 months from now, a year from now. They already have their pay steps in their contract. They know what they're gonna be making. I'm there for another year, I'm gonna make 3% more. I'm there for 5 years, I'm gonna make this amount. We don't have that. There's been years where our correctional officers have gone with a 0% increase in pay. So.
And I would suggest that in the minutes, if this passes, that it clearly states that this was done to address staffing issues so that other employees understand that this being dealt with separately is because we have staffing issues which are resulting in higher costs for the county than if we had more staff there. So, I mean, there's lots of reasons to do it, but we're incurring large costs by moving people out of the county. So from a budget perspective, we're further ahead by providing this raise than if we don't. Because part of our goal, aside from being fair on compensation, is that we want to mitigate the costs of housing people outside of the county to the extent that we can.
This is Matt McKenzie again. Yeah, I support this. The questions you ask, is this going to take care of, our jailers from leaving? And I think that we can all realize, no, it's probably not, but it's going to help. And I mean, that the job they do is something that most of us want to do. And I mean, what it also does is in the community, what's different from being on the road and being a jailer is everybody gets thrown in that jail gets to know who the jailers are. And when you go to Walmart, who do you run into? And I know that can be a little unnerving for family members. And, on the road, they deal with the people they deal with on the road. They don't know everybody in the jail. And that's the reverse for the jail staff. It's sort of like the DA staff. They know everybody that's, on that customer list, let's say it that way. And, because they deal with them. And we're something there as well. So, I recognize we don't have a lot of money. This is going to be difficult for us to do, but I'll also speak on, but there's other people within the county government that we need to do this for as well. And that's the challenge for you, is how do you identify those people and help there? Something I think that could be looked at in the future with this also is protected status for jailers, because what this does also mean, it does mean what it's going to do for their retirement when they get to retirement. And, that helps them there as well. So thank you.
Thanks, Matt. With that being said, I'll call for the question and move to the vote. All those in favor, is this a roll call? Do we need, or?
It's only if it's requested.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I would ask number 8 be tabled since the motion on number 6 made it moot.
Do we need to officially make a motion to table this?
That would be, please, yes.
This is Laura. I'll make the motion to table number 8.
Okay, Laura, thank you.
This is Pat, I'll second.
Pat seconds. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Item number 8 is tabled.
Your mic went out.
Pardon?
Your mic's off.
Your mic's off.
Good. I'm sorry. Item number 9. That's,
And so now we have, number 9 is how do you pay for the corrections officers' wages? So you just voted to increase their wages by $2 an hour.
no, let me understand. The effective date is at next pay period.
Next pay period, yeah.
So as a point of clarification, we know, and it should be noted in the minutes
Correct.
as well. Thank you. So we go to item number 10 then?
No, number 9, we discuss, we need to understand we need direction on how you want to pay for it. So I'm suggesting we use ARPA funding for the remainder of the year.
Do you need a motion for that?
We need a motion.
Yes, please.
Yes.
Says Laura, I'll make the motion to take the $2 increase for the correctional officers out of the ARPA funding for this year.
Ron Stender will second that.
We have a second by Ron Sendor. Any discussion, questions? Pat?
Well, first I want to ask the administrator for clarification. When we say the next pay period is, because I don't know when the pay periods end.
Pay period, the last pay period ended last weekend. Payday is tomorrow, is Thursday.
This Thursday?
So they would see the pay raise, not
The next
this
one.
Thursday's paycheck, but the following 2 weeks from now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just to be clear that the increase will start at the beginning of the next pay period,
Correct.
as opposed to getting that increase in this paycheck, just so we're. on
Right,
this-
it'll be easy. They'll see it in the paycheck. They receive 2 weeks from Thursday.
Just so we're clear
So
on
that's
that.
the next pay period.
Yeah, just so we're clear on that, and there's not a misunderstanding. So I'm
That was
supportive
in the
of,
last motion.
pardon?
That clarification was in the last motion.
Well, I just wanted to be sure that we were on the same page, what we meant by the next pay period, because someone might be looking for that increase in their paycheck a few days from now, as opposed to it's not going to occur until several weeks from now. Just that we're all on the same page there. Because I didn't understand for sure what it meant. But I want to ask the question. So I'm supportive of taking the money from the ARPA funding, but the sheriff's department's got unexpected costs this year related to the jail with moving people out. So where's the impact on that budget? Do they have to find it somewhere else? Or are we going to be asked at some point to consider adding to their budget to make up for what might be a rather large amount before we're done this year?
Well, a good portion of that money is already appropriated. We're short on jail staff right now. So the money that we're not spending on staff is money that can be dedicated towards housing the female staff in another county. So, we don't know, we're not sure exactly how much we'll be short yet. Towards the end of the year, there may be a request to shore up that money. But we'll have to see how it goes. I mean, a lot of it depends on how much overtime we end up having to have in the department. If there's a lot less overtime, then there's more money to pay for the housing. It's weird in the fact that, you don't have that, you're not paying the wages, so you can actually cover the outside expenses easier. So I don't anticipate the amount will be much at the end of the year, given that. I mean, we're going to use existing appropriated monies to pay for it.
At the present time, as I look at it, it's a juggling act. When it comes at the end of the year, if we were to come to another $24,000 deficit, like last year, 21, we can swallow that.
Yeah, I mean, if that's what it ends up being at the end of the year, $25,000 deficit, I think we should all be extremely happy. And that's over a $5 million budget you're talking about. And be short just that little, goes to show how well Sheriff Brennan and Chief Deputy are running that department. I mean, we'll see.
So this is Pat. So again, I'm supportive of taking it from ARPA. So based on the following comments, our anticipation of how the year goes is such that we don't think we could take the 80,000 from the sheriff's department. We think that would be more than their budget could bear. But we also shouldn't be surprised if we do need to shore up that budget a bit as the year goes on.
Correct.
So we're pretty confident that we need to fund this from something other than the sheriff's budget.
Yes, no, the sheriff's budget is extremely tight as it is. And, we have no idea what's going to happen in the future that's going to cause that could cause his budget to go over. There could be something happening in the summer that requires lots of overtime. There could be a natural disaster. There could be anything. And so his budget's tight as it is, and I would expect an additional request later at the end of the year. Probably not much, but I would expect something.
There's so many unforeseen things out there. It's just, it's a gambit. With that being said, I'll call for the question. Matt, you got something?
Yeah, the only question I have is why not just direct this to come out of the general funds? And is there a reason to be specific about this coming from the ARPA funds? Or, I mean, at the end, you know, if there's money left over in any department, for the most part, we don't have that many non-lapsing accounts. It goes to the general fund and it can be used that way. You know, and I guess my question is, by identifying it as ARPA money, does that then commit us to doing that? Whereas if you just said, hey, we're just going to accept that it's going to run over and we're going to take it out of the general fund, it gives more options, as I would see it. Just a question, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's an option for sure. You know, there'd probably have to be some accounting entries made to do it, but that is an option. Whereas the ARPA is a very specific use that's allowable under federal guidelines. So either way works.
Get the job done. Call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you. Item number 10, we want to discuss the sheriff's, we want to revisit this.
Yeah, we wanted to revisit this because, as stated earlier, Sheriff Brennan is the second lowest paid sheriff in the county, in the state. The next lowest paid one is over $5,000 more a year. You know, most of our contemporary, or most of our counties the same size in the same region are paying at least $10,000 more a year. That makes it hard for us to promote people, the command people. As stated earlier, deputies are making more than command officers. With the overtime, there really is no incentive for a deputy to move up. They'd be getting a lot more responsibility, a lot more headaches, and they get paid less. Now, they have hours that are much longer. Frankly, we're not going to get good candidates for sheriff if we don't pay them well. And sheriff is one of the few offices where we need to make sure we have a really qualified person running. So other than that, I can let Sheriff Brennan speak to his thoughts. I want to point out, this will not affect Sheriff Brennan unless he runs for re-election. What we're talking about is raising the pay for the next sheriff, whomever that may be. So it would not take effect until after the November elections. No, sheriff is a November election. Yeah.
Go ahead. That's next.
Sure, I can just say that I agree with what the county administrator said, that I'm not running for a fourth term. I'll be done. So I'm here to advocate for the next sheriff, to have them be compensated at a rate that will be competitive with other sheriffs, and to be able to have a good, qualified, experienced, and trained sheriff to be able to run your agency for the next 4 years after, in 23 to 26. I'm sure that they'll have people that'll step up regardless of the pay, because they're doing it because they love the job and they love the community and they're doing it for the right reason. But it's not always going to be like that. And we're seeing a decrease in the amount of people that are becoming interested in law enforcement profession for various reasons. And you know, from used to have an opening for a deputy, you'd have 40 or 50 people apply for it. And now you're lucky if you get 2 or 3 that'll apply for it. So in order to get a qualified candidate for sheriff, I think it'd be the best interest of the county. Like I say, I don't have a fight, you know, in this issue at all, but to have them compensated for what their responsibilities are and what their duties are. And what Ron asked before about the duties and job descriptions, you go to section statute 5927 in the Wisconsin statutes, and that'll explain to you the duties of the sheriff for the state. So I think that the 67,500 that you have for the 2023, starting with the 71,000 at the end of of this term, that is, I mean, it's a higher pay than what I'm getting, but I don't think it's something that, like I said before, my sergeant right now, my sergeants are making more than the sheriff is right now. So for them to take that job, they would have to take a cut in pay. And if they're doing that, they're doing it for other reason because, like I said before, because of their dedication and commitment to this community, not for the money. And quite frankly, if you ask any law enforcement officer, they're not in this profession to make money, because if they are, they're sadly mistaken. They're not going to do it. So I think it should be revisited and compensated accordingly. We have comparisons. If you would like, I could tell you the different sheriff's wages that are currently right now. And it's like the county administrator said, Ashland County is the second lowest in the state of Wisconsin for wages. So.
Thank you, Mick.
Chair?
Go ahead. Yes.
Something that I don't understand is, and I'm supportive of increasing the salary for the sheriff, because compared to some others, there's a big gap there in compared to a lot of people in local government and others positions that are funded with tax dollars in the area. But what I'm curious about is I hear the phrase, make the deputies are making more, and then with their overtime. And this has in part to do with the wage study and what the county's plans are long-term with staffing, because it seems from comments I hear, and I don't know if these are accurate, that it seems that the county is planning to continue to have deputies working overtime, and that could be because it's hard time getting and keeping people. Is that the long-term plan? And then with the wage study, one advantage of having people work overtime instead of hiring more people is that you save on benefits. And I don't know if that's figured into, how things are here, and if that's the long-term plan. Because if the long-term plan is we're going to keep having deputies working overtime, and that cumulatively results in higher compensation than what we're paying our sheriff, and the sheriff being an elected position, you don't get paid for those extra hours. I worked salary all my life. I know what that's like. You don't get paid for those extra hours. And therefore we have this issue we have. So if we're going to keep having deputies work overtime, we're going to continue to have the same relationship between what they can make and what the sheriff can make, which means effectively we would need to consider higher compensation for the sheriff to address that. But if our plan is to fully staff deputies, then that difference changes. So I'm just curious where we're headed with this.
Well, I'll say that it's definitely cheaper to pay overtime than it is to hire a new person. I can't speak for the deputies, but I think that they all have come to expect overtime pay, hours and pay. I don't know. Sheriff Brennan, maybe you can speak to that.
Well, I can tell you this, Pat, is that I've offered overtime shifts out there in the past for certain events that we need to have extra people on there for officer safety and for the safety of the community. And I don't get any takers. We don't have it. New Year's Eve, county fairs, different events that we have. We're going to have large amounts of people out there. It's not an overtime issue. The overtime that they're occurring is of nature that it's not a planned type overtime. They get a call and they have to continue with that call until it's completed. We only have on our best day 3 people on the road, and that's north, south, and Bad River. So that in itself makes where we have overtime. If you have a bad accident, you have something, an investigation of a sexual assault, you have a domestic, you have mandatory arrest for an OWI at 3 o'clock in the morning. You're supposed to get off at 4 o'clock in the morning. It's going to occur overtime and that type of thing. So I'm not even looking at that aspect of it. As of right now, the base pay for the sheriff for Ashland County is $65,700 for the year 2022. For a patrol sergeant with no overtime, just his regular pay, is at $65,500. So he's making $200 less than the sheriff at this point as a sergeant, okay? Yes, the sergeants have a lot of responsibilities, granted. He is responsible for all the activities that happen on the shift. He's responsible to make sure that all their reports are done correctly, they're turned in a timely fashion, and for the disciplinary actions, but they're people that are under them. They earn that money, they deserve that money. But what I'm trying to say is that there has to be some type of a gap between your command staff and people that are boots on the ground. So it doesn't have anything to do with that overtime. The overtime is not even an issue or factor that I look at. I mean, if you put overtime on this, yes, they're going to be way over what the sergeant or the chief deputy or the patrol lieutenants. My lieutenant, my patrol lieutenant's actually paid less than the sergeant. His wages have $30.09 an hour for a patrol lieutenant who's responsible for the entire patrol staff.
So one more question. The salary is one factor in compensation, and I assume the benefits are parallel, or is that correct?
Every
You guys
member of the
use
sheriff's
mics?
department has the same benefits.
Okay.
And in fact, most of those, all except for a few of them, every county employee has. There's a few little things that the deputies get because they have a union contract. But overall, it's the same as every other county employee.
Yeah, so if we're going to compensate the sheriff more than the deputies because the benefits are the same, then the only way to create that gap is with the salary.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. And I'm going to go out on a limb and recommend $10,000 increase to bring them in line with the 4th and 5th and 6th, 7th lowest. That's really where you are. 77,000 is where you are, even in the bottom 10.
Richard, go ahead.
What kind of an increase are you recommending?
I'm increasing the base for 23 by $10,000.
Okay.
That would still keep us in the bottom 10, but at least it would bring a gap between command staff and the sheriff.
And just so everyone knows, that's not true about the sheriff's department. The jail staff does not have the same benefits as the patrol staff.
Yeah, specified deputies.
Okay,
Yeah.
so just so everybody knows, it's not the same.
You done, Richard?
No, I just briefly going over this comparison list here. 26 of these counties are paying over $90,000 already.
Correct.
A dozen of them are over 100,000 and 5 are over 110. So the increase that you recommended, I think is justified. I'm finding it hard to believe that this is all that we're paying our sheriff. It's just so disgusting. We have to do something about it, and I appreciate your thoughts on that, Dan. Bring it up to at least a comparable with some of the others.
Yeah, it's still a top 10, it's still a bottom 10 number, to be honest. But at least it brings the county up to a level that's commensurate with at least more of the sheriff's colleagues.
Laura?
I'd like to see some steps in there. Right now, we have approved 2% a year each year for the next term, correct?
Yeah, so I would make the 23 term $10,000 higher and then the 2% steps after that.
You know, we could change the percentage that we do to build that up instead of, because I'd like, I mean, without a whole bunch of, we have to be able to afford this too. And I know $10,000 is a drop in the bucket compared to a lot of things, but then we also approved a couple other constitutional officers' pays at 2% too. So I can hear them already starting their paperwork to come to finance. You know, I'm chair of public property. I know what kind of stuff that Mick does. I've talked with Mick before. I know how much he's like a working sheriff, but there's not all sheriffs are working sheriffs. So I get that, but we're not guaranteed that the next sheriff is going to be a working sheriff. We don't know what kind of background there's going to be with that too. I'd really like to see a little more research than just throwing a $10,000 amount on it and then going up. I know we're low, but as long as we approve this before the election, it's valid for that next term.
Has to be,
I
it has
think-
to be done before papers are taken out. So for
When are
November
papers
office,
due?
you take papers out in May.
Okay, so we have a little time here. I'd like to see some kind of increase, and then as we're doing this, we know we're making our next budget go up too. And like I said, I see the other constitutional officers coming back and saying, well, they got a base pay plus this, and we're low too, because we are. I just, I don't have the numbers here offhand for 23, 24, 25 on the 2% and such. I did not figure it out. I was hoping there was going to be a little more background with this besides throwing a $10,000 base at it. But we have a little bit of time on this. And I think as we look at this, we need to think of what we're going to do across the board, because there's going to be more from the other constitutional officers also. I can already see it. So we need to make a plan for it.
Thank you. With this being said, we have some time to deal with this until May. It has to be decided. So then the wishes of the board at this point in time is to go with the recommendation of the Den, or with the suggestion of Laura, of perhaps bringing us back to the table at a future date. Right, Pat?
I concur with a lot of what Laura said on mulling this over and looking at more information. I would add to that, if we're going to do a wage study, I've heard that the employees, I've heard the 80% of what other, people make in the state doing similar jobs. I don't know if 80% is out of the hat or not. I'd like to see, this discussion. It's still on the low end. I don't doubt that, and I'm going to support, some raise. But I'd like to see it in the broader context of how other employees compare to their peers across the state. And, one of the questions that comes up in these discussions or issues is cost of living. As it's certainly cheaper to live here than in some of the other places, and how much should or shouldn't that be factored into that? So, I would be supportive of 5,000, no question. That the 10 pushes my upper limit on this. And having worked in places where raises were handled differently for different groups, I know what it feels like from a morale standpoint. I think I would be more comfortable with more homework on this, more numbers to look at. And the biggest reason to me is just from a morale standpoint. The jail staff I can defend, because we need to attract people, we need to keep people, and we're incurring substantial costs to move people out of the county. From a budget standpoint, I can totally defend that. And as Laura said, we don't know who we're going to get for our next sheriff. And one of the realities of sheriffs is a lot of times, not always, obviously, is they've already retired from a career in law enforcement or maybe something else. And so are they doing it? And I agree, they don't do it for the money, but I don't have a good sense yet of how much money matters in terms of attracting them. And so I would like more information, data, and discussion before we get to a number like the 10,000.
All the comparable salaries are on the county website for anybody, for everyone to look at. So you can see what every sheriff in the county is making. That same document also has every other constitutional officer on it, just in different tabs. I'll make sure the PDF version has that too.
Mike?
Thank you, Dan.
If you could, I wouldn't mind having the actual, the table version of it.
I can send you the Excel version.
That's cool. I like messing with numbers.
And I'm sure that I'm singing to the choir here. You guys are the finance committee, so you know that your other department heads within the county, their wages, what they are. Just the two that I researched themselves are, one's making 78,480 and one's making 75,961. So, for department heads that are comparable to, like, not even as much as the sheriff would be responsible for dealing with. So just as a comparison for you guys to think about. Thank you.
The 5,000 was already approved for the next term, so us being here is saying that's still the lowest and second lowest in the state, so. You saying only 5,000 more, there's no point of us being in this meeting right now if we stay at the 5,000.
Thank you. Pat?
We have employees that are not in constitutional offices, and I have no doubt that there's going to be a number of them, as Laura said, that are going to say, hey, here's how I compare to my peers, across the state or whatever group too. That's going to happen, no doubt. So I would like more information about employees overall, how they compare to their peers. And are we using the same metrics? Are we using, because part of that wage study, if you remember, they would, I think, describe kind of in the region, in the area, which to me, I interpret it as we're looking more northern Wisconsin, maybe northern half. And that is different numbers than if we include the southern half of the state. So when we look at this issue and we are talking about ranking statewide, we're using compensation in the whole state, where often it's higher in the lower part of the state. And that's different than the language used in that wage study.
Point out that the wage study results are not going to come back until the summer, which is too late to make a decision. We do have the comparables for all of the sheriffs in the state. So we can certainly pick and choose the ones in the region out of there for comparable numbers. Constitutional officers are a little bit easier to do with on this because you have to set their wages for a 4-year term. So we know what their wages are, and they're all. So, if we just look at, Bayfield County is, I can't read, but, Bayfield County is at 90,000. This is all up on the screen for everyone, and the files and the website. Price County is at 77,438. So we do have an idea of what the northern regional numbers are. And like I said, a wage study won't affect the constitutional officers, and those numbers, it won't be back till summer anyhow. So, but you can postpone this if you like.
With that being said, let's put this on the agenda for future discussion, where more information could be available to the committee. Is that the desire of the group? Laura? Be good with that?
Yeah, I was just gonna suggest that, so.
Okay. With that being said, we'll bring this back at a later date. Moving on to item number 11. M3 is an update. We have a handout in our packet.
So it looks like, and compared to past years, I want to stress that, compared to past years, it looks like 2021 finished out better. Still $104,000 in the hole, but that's getting better. And a positive movement is always good. Hopefully, the changes that we made in deductibles will eat up a lot of that $100,000. There will be there won't be a need to do anything with insurance next year. I can tell you that M3 is working on a wellness plan right now. They'll have that done in the next couple of months. We'll be looking at other portions of the health insurance, whether or not to go towards having preferred providers. So for example, Pharmacy is a big one. If you take drug X and you go to say Walgreens, they're next door, you pay $10 for it. But if you go down to if you go to Walmart, you have to pay 15 for the same one because there's a preference built in for one pharmacy because you strike a deal with that pharmacy. So we'll be looking at that. And we'll be looking at every other method we can to cut the cost of healthcare for next year without raising premiums. I can say that, one of the biggest factors into next year is stop loss insurance. We've had a number of COVID cases here in the county, which have cost about $1.7 million last year. And stop loss is going to eating a lot of that, probably more than they planned. So I imagine that our premium is going to go up significantly, even if we can get the insurance. So just something to be be aware of.
I think we still have 5 things left on the agenda.
All right, Laura.
Couple things. I would like to see someone actually from M3 come in at least quarterly to update us on this. I realize you talked to them, Dan, but sometimes we have questions. And also, Mark Cuban just came out with a generic low charge company for pharmaceuticals. And it's called costplusdrugs.com. And I know there's heart medications, diabetes, let's see, gastrointestinal, mental health medications, high blood pressure, cancer meds. They are buying direct from the manufacturers, and there's some good prices on there. So I would like that. You just have your prescription sent there like you would for Walgreens. So I don't know what M3 thinks about that, but I know I'm hoping that the staff will find out about this because there's some darn good prices on some generics that are on there if you have a
Right.
generic or can get a generic.
The issue on that's going to be whether or not they accept health insurances. There are places where people without insurance can get very low cost drugs. Walmart being one of them. So I don't know who this is directed towards. We'd have to investigate that. We're also going to look at Amazon too, because they're doing a lot of the same thing, and with their fulfillment service, I mean, they can take care of everyone.
Yeah, there's you can get Prozac for someone with mental health. You can get a 30-day supply for $3.90. And no, this one doesn't take insurance, but I think your $10 copay is more than the $3.90 on there. I mean, there's tons of them. Zoloft is $3.90. Lipitor is $3.60. So it's whatever options we can offer our staff to make it least expensive on them, I'm all for. So thanks for checking into Amazon too. I appreciate that.
Any other discussions? Let's move on then to investments.
We did make a slight change.
Dan, your mic.
We did make a slight change to the investment report. We took off account numbers.
Cool.
I just didn't think it was safe to put them online. So other than that, you'll see the investment report here. And it looks fairly similar to what we've seen before. Here's the jail assessment fund that you're going to be that they want to take money out of to do some improvements. I think that was discussed actually last night. I don't know if there are any questions.
Is there anything we should be looking at? Any highlights of anything that
No,
you should?
it looks pretty standard.
Okay.
If we're good with that, let's move on.
Uh,
Sales tax.
Sales tax, is up roughly $200,000 last year. So that's good news. We're hoping that the sales tax for 21 or 22 follows that trend. So any ideas you can do, get tourists up here. Let's get them up here.
This is Pat. The one bright side to inflation is prices go up and therefore sales tax collections go up.
Yeah, that's true.
Item next is the health insurance.
I think we covered that in M3.
Yeah. And then the last item here, Ashland County Vet's Office.
I was asked to put this on the agenda. So
Yeah.
Richard?
First of all, this was my idea. I don't want to get anybody else in the jackpot. I'm just going to read a little statement that I wrote here. When the last Veteran Services officer left, the entire load of that office was dumped on the secretary, Lori Lundquist. He took it upon herself to dive into this temporary position with both feet. Her life was disrupted for 4.5 months while she diligently increased contacts by 63%. The enthusiasm of which she undertook this daunting task is proof positive of the caliber of that employee. When we have exemplary employees, it's the right thing to do, especially if we hope to retain that caliber employee, is to compensate them for their extraordinary effort. Absolutely no recognition was ever given to Ms. Lundquist. It was totally overlooked by 2 previous administrators. It's time that we acknowledge her outstanding dedication to the county and, more importantly, the veterans in our area. I believe we should pay tribute to her with a plaque and some monetary compensation to be determined by this board. We want the message to be out there that Ashland County appreciates its dedicated employees and takes care of them. Thank you. Now, I did pass out this note that we got from Mr. Itzen, John Itzen, the last time around. Did you want a copy, Matt? I got one. I got one.
When you guys do this, it would be nice if you'd get it ahead of time so we could have it in the packet too online.
Chair Poofall brought this to the meeting.
Thanks, Dan.
Discussion, anyone?
Yeah, I'd like to, I'll just weigh in. This is another item I think we can agree on, Dick. You know, many of you may know I'm a veteran. I also have a disability. And I've worked with Laura down there in that office, and I can tell you she provides a top tier service. I mean, we could find maybe somebody that provides equal to that quality, but you're not going to find somebody that exceeds it. She does a great job for us, and I support any recognition that we can pass her way, because she has and continues to do a wonderful job for the veterans in this community. And it's not, you know, it's not a social service program. It's something that we owe the service members of this country. And, you know, it's put there as a standalone department, if you will, so that it's not lumped in with, you know, the social programs where people consider it welfare. And what it's really about, it's about looking through the benefits that are provided for vets and getting them what they need. And it's a daunting task to try and figure out what is there to help you and what isn't. And that's where her years of experience really pay off as well, is there's not much she hasn't done for veterans. So she has an understanding of how she can help them with their, final arrangements, or she can help them get the medical care or, what other care that they may need. So if we can do this, I'm all in support of it, and I'm happy to see this, and I think it is something we should look at. Thank you.
Thanks for your comment.
Pat?
This issue came up a year ago in finance, and the previous administrator's position was that the finance committee and board should not support this request. So, as Matt knows, I'm a veteran too, and certainly supportive of having that office here and the work that they do. In my earlier conversations on this topic, I said then, and I still believe, that when the veteran service officer left and this person took on those tasks, that was the point which the administrator had primary responsibility to make sure that that office was staffed sufficiently and employees compensated appropriately. The previous administrator had said that how that was handled then before my time on the board, so I don't know the details. The previous administrator said that that was handled, appropriately. Certainly that person could have asked for more at that time, and certainly the administrator and perhaps executive committee should have said, look, we need to, compensate that person at a higher level if they're going to do that work something out there. But that didn't happen. And so these situations, arise, fairly often where we have employees that go above and beyond and they're not compensated beyond that. Whether that's fair or not, I don't know. So I guess my suggestion to the administrator would be to review this situation and see if the county followed the appropriate steps that the county should have followed based on the HR manual at that time. If the county, in the process of either asking this person to take on additional duties above the level for which they were compensated, if that person was asked to do this and the county didn't take its responsibility to make sure the person was compensated appropriately, if there's no evidence that those steps were taken, then maybe from the administrator standpoint, it would justify coming back to the finance committee and board and saying, look, in the past, the county didn't fulfill its obligations based on that HR manual, and this would be a fair way of addressing it at this point. I'd like to see that research and opinion. But I also want to remind everybody, this goes back to Laura's comment with the sheriff's department. Will we have other people asking for raises, et cetera, and compensation? And the answer is yes. And we only have to look back to last summer when we found out we were going to get ARPA money. We had about a 15-page document, as I recall, from employees asking for additional funding for various reasons. So, as we look at people or departments piecemeal, we know that that has an impact on other employees and what they're going to ask for.
Did you have your hand up, Laura?
I did. Can we make sure whatever Dick passed out gets scanned in and put in the packet, please?
Yeah, we'll get it on the website for you.
Thank you, Dan.
I have looked at this situation. This happened when Jeff Burrow was an administrator. I think the county handled it properly back then. I do think Lori deserves some sort of recognition. I think I don't know if the county gave her enough recognition. I also know that if you approve monetary recognition, then I'm going to have 100 people lined up outside my door asking for the same thing. I think it's going to create strife and resentment within the county. I think is looking at the greater picture. I think a plaque would be great. I think even a resolution by the county board thanking her would be appropriate. But it's your decision.
As far as what you just said goes, Dan, I don't know anybody working here that did what she did and could expect something for it. She never asked for anything for it. One of the things that should be taken into consideration here is that while she was doing this, we were still paying her secretary's wages and she's doing a full-time job. So there was a wage and a half that was never trickled down to her. She still was working for the same wage as she was making as a secretary. She got paid for her extra hours. That's not the point. We saved a lot of money for 4.5 months by not paying the administrator of that office wages to anybody. So it's not like this is coming out of nowhere. It's money that we saved by not having that person on board for 4.5 months. Thank you.
So I asked the administrator, this is Pat, what is the county's policy if someone is out and someone who's at a lower level of compensation has to step in and fill those duties? Is that person who steps in and does the duties of someone that's compensated at a higher level? Does the person stepping in get any higher compensation or not? Is that in our HR manual? How is that addressed?
No, the person does not normally get higher compensation. Compensation can be awarded based on each individual situation, but no, they're not automatically entitled to it. We expect that when there's staff turnover, people in department help out and get the department operating. The county's operating full. Sometimes that means that a junior member of the department is promoted to a senior member of the department. So, we've had situations where we promote people to run that department, and that's how they're compensated. Other times, part-time people are given full-time jobs, and they're compensated that way. I have offered to give Lori a full-time position when one opens up, so she qualifies for full county benefits. So that is out there.
So if the county's policy was in situations such as that one way they do it is the person takes on those additional duties of someone who is compensated higher until that position is filled. So that's consistent with the HR manual at the time. And that's the basis then for why you said Jeff Burrow handled it appropriately.
Well, they're not compensated higher. They're compensated for the time they.
Right. So compensated at the current rate.
Yeah.
While taking on duties of someone who was compensated at a higher level. So that's consistent with the HR policy at the
Yes.
time. And that's your basis for why Jeff Burrow handled
Yeah.
it appropriately.
Yeah.
So given that, Mr. Pufall, as much as, I'm supportive of your intent here, just, the consistency with following the manual and other employees, what that does to morale, I've been through this enough times, employees, I fully get the impact of that, because it isn't always done according to the manual or fairly, and it does have a big impact. So if we could do something to recognize her, or if there's other things that we can do that are appropriate, I'd certainly support that. And I will say that when I taught math at WITC, if I had students that were veterans and they were having things going on in their life where they needed to deal with those, that veteran service officer's office was always really good about helping those people deal with those things. And until they dealt with the issues they needed to through the VA office here, they weren't going to be successful in school. So I've seen a lot of people firsthand benefit from the service that they get from that office. So, and I think is recognizing that person, they have a great impact, because when they help the veterans be successful and deal with what they deal with, that helps the veteran, their family, their employer, the community. There's a big impact there with what they provide.
Thanks, Pat. I think Laura had her hand up before.
I would concur with Pat. And I would hope that we could do a plaque such as the county chair suggested, and possibly the resolution that Dan had brought up. But I otherwise, I mean, if anything got taken further, I'd have to have Corp Council's opinion on everything. So that's it.
Thank you, Laura. Matt?
Matt McKenzie again. I guess the one thing I would point out that is, don't rule out the chance of a financial incentive for her as well. I know that recently we authorized a pay increase for one of our employees because it was grant funding and it could come from a grant that wasn't coming from our tax levy. I think we could look at veteran services because I know they have a non-lapsing account that they receive grant funding for that can be used towards salary increases or salary augmentation, whatever the correct wording is, I'm not sure. But it's spelled out, by the federal government, I believe is where the basis of that is from, or maybe it's the state, but there is, a possibility, maybe something like that could be used if the current veteran service officer agreed with something like that. So I would just ask that you look into that before you slam the door on any financial incentive as well.
That fund is given to the county to help offset the levy. So that's really money that we should be going into the general fund. That account, along with a bunch of others, our consultants are going to recommend that they be folded back into the general fund where they're supposed to be. So
Okay. Point of
having said that,
clarification on that, isn't that supposed to stay a segregated fund?
no, it's
I
supposed to
thought-
offset. It's supposed to offset the wages that we pay for John and Lori.
I understand that, but I
So
thought
it's really- it's
somewhere
really
in there,
offsetting
I'd
the
looked
levy.
up before that it was supposed to stay a segregated fund.
We're supposed to use it to pay John and Lori. So it really
Yeah.
offsets the levy. So that money should be go into the general fund and pay John and Lori with it as a revenue from that department.
I'm going to respectfully disagree on that because I thought we looked this up like over a year ago. And that's why it was pulled back out of there into a segregated fund, is because that was only supposed to be used for that purpose. So it needed to be segregated. I mean, John's on this call, I thought, or on this Zoom meeting. If he has some insight on that piece, I'd appreciate his input. But I thought we looked this up before and this was supposed to stay segregated because it was for that purpose. John?
Yes, hi, this is John. Laura, you are correct. The funds are required by state statute to remain in a separate non-lapsing account.
That's what I thought it was. Thank you.
So am I to understand that prior moment, the way Laura was wording this as a plaque and a resolution, was that the beginning of a motion that you were thinking about, or what?
We can't. It just
understand
says recognition to veteran service officer assistant, and there's no page in the packet that has anything on there. So it doesn't say we're going to take any other thing. I mean, I don't think we need to have a motion to do that. I think having a plaque and a resolution made up is just something we can direct staff to do. But otherwise, it doesn't say we're taking any action on this piece. And it's a one-liner on there.
Well, recognition means doing something. So I would actually prefer a motion and a vote on something.
Okay, at this point, then I'll make that motion as for recognition for the Veteran Service Officer Assistant Lori Lundquist, that we do a plaque and a resolution for her. It's as fancy as you guys are getting from me right now.
I'll second that.
We have a motion with Laura, second by Rod and Dick.
You guys have to use your mics.
I'm sorry, Ms. Negro, could you please repeat your motion?
My motion is for recognition to the Veteran Service Officer Assistant Lori Lundquist, that we get her a plaque and direct staff to do a resolution for her.
And we have a second.
Mr. Cisnori, do you second that? Okay, just making sure.
Discussion?
Well, like Matt said, I hope this isn't closing the door on considering some kind of monetary compensation. This is above and beyond the call of duty, people. The fact that she increased the contacts by over 60% during her time as acting Veteran Services Officer says something about the quality of the employee. And I agree with the fact that we should give her a plaque of recognition, but I don't think that's going far enough. I think that some sort of compensation should be given to her, to be determined by Finance Committee. And I hope by doing this resolution, that isn't closing the door on that possibility.
Let the chair ask the question with regards to comment that Matt had made with regards to the money portion. She had taken on these job duties and responsibilities, and she was paid her secretarial wage. The money that was saved by the Veterans Administration, did that all disappear at the end of the calendar year, or is that still in that revolving account, or?
It's all reverted to the general fund.
I guess the question I'm getting at is the amount that was saved. Is there any remote probability of utilizing some of that for a monetary award?
Well, there was no money saved, really. When you look at the county-wide, the county still lost money. So the money that reverted back to the general fund was just help the county not be in the red as much.
I'm looking for a monetary resolution to support the plaque and the resolution to this individual.
I can't hear you. Well, I don't know if anybody ever sat down. I don't know if Mr. Itzen came up with that figure by the difference in wages. I don't know that for sure. The amount that he mentioned was 2,500. If the committee would consider this, would they consider say a lesser sum of $1,250 or $1,000 or something to that effect? Because that money that was not spent on an officer was put back in their coffers. So the money is there.
This is Pat. As much as I would like to support this request, based on the administrator's comments that the process used when this was done followed the HR manual at the time, given that, we would be doing something that isn't consistent with following the HR manual. And I think that's a precedent that I don't want to knowingly participate in, because I know what that does to morale. We should set a high standard for that. We should do our best to follow it. And sometimes it's really hard to follow it. And this is one of those. But if that followed the HR manual and there's documentation to show that, I think the right thing for the county as a whole is to follow that decision from the administrator. And again, we had that 15-page document from employees when we had ARPA money, all saying why they would like more compensation. And I will tell you, when I read every one of those letters they wrote, I would like to say yes to every one of those that asked for more money from the ARPA funds. I think it's all deserving. We're doing a wage study to try to be more fair with compensation, but we all know what the budget looks like. And I think all of us are old enough to know that when employees aren't treated, quote, fairly, or rules aren't followed, we know what that does to morale. And so as much as I'd love to say yes to this, I have to look at the big picture and not support a monetary compensation.
Go ahead, Matt.
Matt McKenzie again. I do know that under that administration, we also allowed bonuses for work that was done above and beyond. So it wasn't something that couldn't be done, even under those rules. We're not talking about a wage adjustment here. I'm looking at some sort of monetary compensation, and all I'm suggesting is there may be some ability to do that through this non-lapsing account that they have in the Veteran Service Office. And I think it would be worth looking at and seeing if there's a possibility to use that to do something here. Not, trying to put a dollar amount on there. I'm just saying, if we can do something through that account, because it does talk about compensation for those employees. I mean, she works out of that office. If there's some money there, it's a segregated account. Let's look at doing it. And before you say no to it, I'm just asking that we further explore that.
Well, let me ask this question. I do not understand why at the time the situation arose, why it wasn't dealt with then. In other words, the employee and the county reach an agreement on workload and compensation. And that's my earlier question. The administrator was looking at this. If the county and the employee had that conversation and there's document to show that they did, then that was the decision and agreement reached at the time. Could it have ended up differently if the employee said, look, I want, something different, something more? Could it have been different if the administration or executive committee said, look, we need to compensate at a higher level for whatever reason, at that point? But if the documentation shows that the county followed the process at the time according to the HR manual, then it's really hard to justify going back and changing something because a decision was made. And again, if there's documentation that shows that versus it's just slipped through the cracks and the administrator never talked to the employee and the employee just picked up the duties and said, well, I'm just doing this because it needs to be done. If there's no documentation to show that there was an agreement with the employee, that's a different story because then it's on the county for not having done its job. But if there's documentation to show the county's done its job, it is what it is at this point.
The documentation you're looking for is the fact that the job got done, whether or not it was agreed upon or asked to do the extra work. I don't know that. I don't know that anything was ever done in that regards when the other VA officer was replaced. I don't know if anything transpired between Jeff and Lori. I don't know that. All I know is you can't discount the fact that she did the damn work. I mean, and you said something about the deal was made according to HR. What? I don't know what you're talking about. What?
Well, no, Mr. Keeney was asking about where's proper procedures followed, and the proper procedures were followed at the time.
Chair?
Well, before any resolution is voted on here, I wish we would give it a little bit of time, so maybe Dan can check into what Matt was talking about, the VA office, if there's any money available through them. I think they probably would have a bigger heart than what we've got right here. Is that a possibility?
If Mr. Pufall would like that and the committee agrees, I have no objections.
Laura?
As we do this, then how many other positions had a gap in their administrative position and someone below them handled the whole department while someone else is being hired? I mean, Lori had an administrator pass away and she handled everything at her wage for a year, correct? When we're shuffling people around in departments and trying to find new department heads, there's people handle things for 3, 4, 5 months if we can't find the right candidate. And they get compensated their pay So what kind of precedent are we setting with this? I get what you're saying about it. And we're just lucky that Lori is the person that she is, that she increased the numbers for the department because she's just that kind of person. But our departments and the people underneath the department heads pick up for each other all the time. If they're compensated according to what our procedures are, we need to follow that. Otherwise, we put the county in a pretty precarious position, especially when it's, there's a significant amount of time in between that and the discussion. This might be different if it was at that point of discussion, but she was also taken from a part-time person to a full-time person, which was something that had to be approved by the administrator. Do I think it's fair? No. But that's our procedures and that's what they did. And I don't think setting precedent of second guessing that is something we should be doing.
Thank you, Laura. Let me ask this question. Your motion stands,
My motion stands.
the second stand? Ron? With that being said, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Updates? Got them all covered?
Yeah. Sorry, we covered up most of them.
I do have a
I did talk
question.
about build, I can give you a little update on the building. We did have one quote to fix the I-beam upstairs. We're still waiting for a second quote on that. As soon as we get that, we will schedule somebody to go up there. The amount is just is under $1,500, so we won't need to go get further approvals. We're still waiting for our structural engineer to come back again to give us the scope of work for the really big portion. So that's gonna have to wait until the snow melts. So we will get back to this committee at a later date about that. And that, I think everything else has been covered. Laura has something.
Question?
In number 14, the health insurance, it says on there, and I know you said that was covered under the M3 part, but on the in the packet, it has it looks like the opioid settlement stuff. Was there something that we needed to know out of that, or is that just an information point?
That got put in by mistake. I'm sorry about that.
Okay.
No, but I can tell you that all 72 counties have joined the settlement. So we should be receiving payment in a month or two for the first payment. And Wisconsin is it might be the only state that had all litigants agree.
Oh,
So.
with that, our next meeting date is going to be
So we have executive scheduled for, I believe, the 14th or 15th. Lori, do you have it on your calendar down there?
We have one set for the 10th.
Okay, so executive will be next week on the 10th, and the county board is the 22nd, I believe.
Correct.
Having said that, we have, when would you like to meet? Or do you want to do a date subject to the call of the chair?
This is Pat. I'd prefer we set a date so I can plan around it.
Do you want to say March 1st or March 8th?
Dan, were you trying to originally stick to like the third Thursday of the month?
I was trying to, but we got we're gonna have county executive committee just a couple days before the next third Thursday. And I don't know if we're getting too far away by going to March 15th. Well, we can always set it for March 15th and call one earlier if we need to.
We could do that.
Yeah. March 15th it is.
All right, and then if an issue arises, we'll call a meeting earlier.
Right, right. Any other discussion? Well, there's nothing on the agenda. Looking for a motion to adjourn?
Pat will second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried.